First time I've had an excuse to use this. So today is the 14th of October 2025. Now this video is not going to be a typical one because usually I'd be reading off a script and not even recording myself. So I'm definitely not used to this style of content, but I wanted to come on here and just talk about a recent experience that I had, just to use as something to personally reflect on for myself, or maybe help someone that can benefit off me talking about my situation. So basically, as you can tell from the title and thumbnail, I was recently admitted to hospital. Now, this came completely out of nowhere. If any of you that have seen one of my videos, I'm always a big advocate for health, fitness, and just in general, just looking after yourself. So for someone like me, who I've always seen as someone that is quite healthy and has a very healthy lifestyle, being put in hospital, I've just turned 24, I turned 24 not that long ago. Already it's been a bit of a shock. I didn't think I was reaching UNC status that quickly and declining like this, but yeah, here we are. So pretty much with the gist of this video, I wanted to come here and explain my recent situation and basically how to prevent making the same mistake as what I've done, which inevitably may impact a big part of the rest of my life. So essentially, I'll start with a little backstory to myself. As I said, I've not scripted this, so yeah, we'll see how this goes. So back when I was younger, like we're talking early years of high school, I've always been naturally really skinny. Yeah, I've never really had muscle or anything like that. I've always just been a really skinny little boy, I don't know. And for me, I just wanted to just bulk up and go to the gym. And I found it really hard to start with, especially when talking the age of when I could first start going, I was 15 when I first started training. Around that sort of time, I went on holiday. I was 16 years old. I went to Bulgaria. I just remember being really ill. It was a really hot country and I was wearing jeans and wearing a jumper. Like I was really freezing cold. I had no appetite. I was underweight, really sort of toned. I didn't look ill, but I was definitely underweight for my age. At the age of 16, I was around sort of 10 stone, whatever the equivalent of that is in kg, like around 50 sort of kg. And something went right. I was having diarrhea. I remember I used to work on a pick your own site in the summer. You know, the big summer you used to get, at least here in the UK, you get a big summer when you graduate high school. And I remember just doing nothing but working. And as I'm sitting there and working on this pick your own site, I'd just go to have a coffee and it would literally go straight through me. It got to the point where it was so bad that it was quite clear that my body wasn't absorbing what it should have been. So basically, long story short, after getting tested at the hospital, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. So of the large intestine, basically a big buildup of tiny little ulcers all around my large colon, and I was immediately put on medication for that. I was put on what's called Pentasa, which is the brand, but the actual name of it is called mesalazine, which is an anti-inflammatory drug. I was given a small dose every single day. I don't care sharing all of this. I was given both, two forms of taking it, like orally and then as a depository as well. I didn't want to take it that way, not gonna lie. As a 17-year-old, when you've been told that, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, nah. And then so basically I was put on this. I was told from my doctor at the time, I guess part of it, they don't want to scare a 17-year-old and start saying, oh, you can't drink this or you can't eat this. I'd made no sort of changes around my diet at this point in time. Anyway, I took the medication every single day. And after about a year, I'd put on a considerable amount of weight. Now, at the time, I was going to the gym as I was normally, and I made the conscious effort to bulk up. I was also taking bulking powder at one point in time, no other supplements whatsoever. I was just sort of taking this mesalazine, and I was eating a lot. This was the start of sixth form. I used to be on the bursary there, so I used to get food at the school. We had this like program where you could apply to get food pretty much. So that's how I got that. And then I took a packed lunch, and then I ate, and then I go to the gym. It was a lot of crap food. I'm not gonna lie, like it was a lot of processed stuff I was eating. Like, I was eating hash browns, I was eating, you know, like the little Scotch pancakes you get from Sainsbury's. And I'd go have a McDonald's, I'd get like loads of chicken nuggets and go home, have a protein shake or a bulk shake with my meal. So I was consuming so many calories, like probably like 4,000-5,000 a day, probably. Yeah, on a very high end. So it was a lot. And you can imagine the implications of some of that. I mean, I got really bad acne at one point. Yeah, okay, I put on a lot of weight, put on a lot of muscle mass, and I could lift a lot. But yeah, my skin was really poor at this point in time. However, the point of this was that the mesalazine that I was taking was working and had worked because I'd gained weight. Because the main symptom of ulcerative colitis is of course weight loss. My flashes seem to have died, but we'll continue. So essentially within a year, I'd gained a load of weight, and now at the age of, coming towards the age of 18, sort of 17, 18 borderline, I was around sort of 12 stone or just over that, which is a considerable difference from 10 stone, especially within that short period of time. And then all the other symptoms with the ulcerative colitis went. So the medication works. And then from this, I basically stuck to it. And basically this is where things kind of fizzled out a bit. This is where we're sort of leading up to the year of 2019 to 2020. And you can imagine what happened in that year. Basically, I went from having an appointment at the hospital to then going to a phone call appointment during lockdown, and then things really fizzled out from there. Basically, for whatever reason, I had these fairly regular checkups after I was diagnosed with it when I was 17, but not that often. I had a couple blood tests at my GP, but then we get to 2020 and then it all just completely went out the window, obviously with lockdown and everything. Yeah, I didn't have any in-person appointments, blood tests, etc. Now at this point in this time, I was a key worker. I was working at my local co-op, so I was also very busy on my end. So it was a two-way street, but I didn't have any checkups. Following this, so I continued to take my medication. That whole time, that period, I didn't lose any weight. I'd maintained my weight. I mean, I'd lost a little bit of muscle mass when the gyms shut with lockdown, but that was it. And then basically time passed. I had a couple in-person appointments, but that was it. And I was still able to have my prescription. Then I did a bit of research and I found that I didn't necessarily, well, I felt as if I didn't need to take the medication anymore and as regularly as I thought, because, well, the idea of it was that it was something that would help me, but it wasn't necessarily like I'd say a long-term solution. That's all I had in my head. I'm not a fan of taking drugs. Like I absolutely, even like medicinal drugs, I just stay away from anything. I don't like painkillers, anything. I just much prefer more natural routes, because I'm a big believer in there being a lot of more natural resolutions to a lot of issues. So I made the decision myself to come off it completely. For the period of about a year, I just sort of managed it with my own diet. And I tried to get a lot better with what I was eating, and eating a lot more organic foods, whole foods, and more nutritional food rather than just let's get the calories in. It was completely two different sides. And then I tried to be better with my overall health, basically, and my skin, etc. I mean, I'd always had this ongoing issue with my acne, and a large part of that was to do with my diet, and as I've come to realise now. So basically getting on a year or just over a year of me not taking them at all. In that period of time, I'd moved away to another part of the UK, since moved back to where I currently live at the moment. When I moved back here, I felt that I had lost some weight again. I thought that it was quite quick as well, and how I had lost it. I'm in great shape, how I look on the outside, but something part of me was just like, I want to be safe. I don't just want to chance anything. So I requested my prescription again, a repeated prescription, and I had an appointment at my GP, quickly enough approved. The quick appointment was just sort of like checking in on how I felt, my weight, if I had any pains. I felt like I wanted to get the medication in case of flare-up. So I started taking it again, and it's exactly the same dosage once a day. And then basically that was maybe nearly 2 years ago. And then since then, I've been living life normally. I've been doing a lot of traveling. I've basically had a very fulfilled past couple of years. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, start of September this year, September 2025, I got a random rash or a couple of spots from what I originally thought was a bite turned into shingles. And I had that when I was on holiday with my mates, and it is one of those things that's annoying. It's like just all on one side, like a red rash, and it was itchy. I'm not going to lie and say it wasn't painful, but it was tolerable. But it was out of nowhere. I don't know of too many people to get shingles. I've had chickenpox in the past. If you don't know what it is, by the way, it is like just the adult form of chickenpox. But it was a bit odd. So I did some research, and the stage I was at with it, it was one of those things where you can't really treat it. So you just have to get on with it. So that's what I did. And that's what I usually do. If I ever have anything, that's been my go-to. I like to use the phrase firm it. So you just get on with it. But yeah, I came back to the UK after that, and I got a message to have a blood test. And this blood test was from my GP, and it was just simply a message to say that I was due a blood test. So I thought, okay, like I'll go in and had it. And then this is where things really sort of start to turn. I had a missed message from my dad and my stepmom. Basically, they'd had a out of hours doctor phone them at 4 a.m. on their landline from the hospital where I live, telling them or asking them if I'm all right and for them to immediately get back in touch with them. Now, this was shortly after I'd done my blood test at my GP. It was one of those things that was like obviously completely out of nowhere. And then I answered sort of whatever it was in the morning, 8 a.m, 7 a.m, and said, yeah, I'm absolutely fine. Like, what's the issue? After you can imagine, my stepmom was panicking, having a doctor tell you certain things. After this, a doctor from the GP then gave me a phone call. We joked about it. He said, do you have so-and-so, all these symptoms? And I thought, what? Like, no. And he's like, well, going off your bloods, you got like the bloods of like someone that's like really old, of someone that's like in really poor health. And I just thought, like, this doesn't sound right. And we thought it was either mixed up at the lab or, I don't know, there's just like some sort of complication. So they got me to do another blood test. Then I had to go to my office, and my drive, it's about a 2.5 hour drive from where I live, so it's not exactly local. I got a phone call when I was there from someone else at my GP telling me that my blood results were a complete match and a complete repeat. And I thought, okay, both of us was puzzled on the phone because, well, I had no symptoms. I had recently had shingles, and that's all I could think about that I'd had of recent, but there was absolutely no symptoms with what I felt fine. I was working normally. I'd just driven that day 2.5 hours. Throughout summer, been traveling, doing all these sports. And then the nurse, after a couple of conversations to and from with the hospital, she basically said that I needed to immediately leave and drive back to go to hospital. And they were even looking at hospitals locally to where I work, but I said no. I did push it to say, like, can it sort of wait the next day? That didn't go down well. I had no choice but to go to the hospital there and then. So very, very strangely, I had to sort of, leave work. And then I went to the hospital and had all these tests done. And I say tests, it's just standard blood pressure, urine sample, had an ECG, and then I had a small ultrasound. And then I was with this consultant, and we were just talking going backwards and forwards, being like, well, this is what we're getting in the results right now, but you've got no symptoms. Out of absolutely nowhere, that I was told that my body, or specifically my blood levels, had 5 times the amount of the standard amount of creatine that my blood should have. 5 times the amount. And for those that don't understand what creatine is, or creatine, I think that's how you say it, it's the waste product of when your muscles move. So every time you move, like a small movement, even your eyes, just anything all over your body's always producing it as a waste product, and it's in your blood, and your kidneys filter it out. Well, for some reason, my kidneys were working really, really slowly, and I had extremely high levels of it in my blood, quite dangerous levels. And it was a bit of a shock. And I didn't really know what to think of it, because I'm being told it's serious, but like, I feel fine, and I am fine, but I'm clearly not. I didn't tell anyone at the time. I didn't tell my family or anything. I was in the hospital. I'm not one to get people to worry until I know the full story. So I managed to go home that night because they saw I was well enough to drive, etc. Went in the next day, had more blood tests, same sort of results, had another ultrasound, this time a bigger one. In the ultrasound this time, they could see that there was inflammation of the kidney, but that was all they could get. Of all the samples I've done of the urine, my urine had small traces of protein and small traces of blood. We're talking microscopic, but it's there, which is small signs of kidney impairment. And there's the creatine levels in my blood that's like ridiculously high, but that's the only indicator that everyone's going off here. And now they've found, okay, it looks like my kidneys are slightly inflamed. That's the best way the doctor could describe it to me. So with all this in mind, of course they need more information. So I was then booked in to do a kidney biopsy the following Monday morning. So I had the weekend to go away. Of all places, I went and did a podcast in London on Saturday because I thought I just want to take my mind off things. I don't want to think about hospital. Come the Monday, first thing, I'm in this room, and I knew exactly what a kidney biopsy was. But for those that don't understand what a kidney biopsy is, basically, they needed to scrape or to collect certain amounts of tissue of my kidneys to examine it, basically. And the way they do that is through a needle in my back, more commonly on your back, because that's where you're close to where your kidneys are located. And they take a couple samples and that's it. That's pretty much so they can just examine it. So I knew exactly what I was getting myself. Well, I say I know exactly, like I've done it before. I had a rough idea kind of what to expect. As a biopsy goes, I'm sitting there, you go through the standard procedure. I'm in my gown of of all the implications they have to read off, and they have to mention death. That's gonna sort of make it seem a bit more real. You've got 3 doctors in a room telling you, oh yeah, you could die from what we're about to do to you. And basically I was laying on my front. They're doing an ultrasound so they can see my organs and locate my kidney through under my skin. For those also that don't know what an ultrasound is, it's when you can see a baby in a womb. It's exactly that. They put cold jelly on you and then they've got the roller. So having that, and then they've got a needle. I didn't look at the needle. I'm not great with needles. I've had a fair few of them now and blood tests done, but I just sort of look away. Basically what they did, they get you on the front and they have to prepare you. So obviously you've got one half of your back sort of exposed, and then they're sort of like, they sort of do like a mark the spot of where they're gonna get into you. Basically your kidneys, with that, it's all about controlling your breathing. So of course you're conscious for this because you need to control your breathing, you need to work with the doctor. So I had to do some breathing exercises. It told me, the doctor at the time, he sort of said, right, we want you to breathe normally, slowly, and then you're gonna breathe in, then hold your breath, and as you hold your breath, he then takes a piece of my kidney. It's a very weird thing because it's a long needle, but it's got, at the end of it, it's got something that scrapes, and it sounds exactly like a stapler. So it's like a clicking sound. So I know exactly when they're taking parts of my kidney out. We get to it, we're doing it, and I have also the local anaesthetic as well, so I could feel my back was numb, and that's also another weird sensation. For anyone that's had a filling before, it's exactly like that, but underneath your skin on your back is another, it's a bit of an odd one. Then as the procedure goes, I'm laying there, and they've sort of done it a couple times. They told me beforehand they'd probably take about 3 samples max. And after the second one, I could hear the doctors sort of speak amongst each other, and they say to each other, oh, I think we just got the outer bit of it. And I could clearly hear them, and then I basically said, oh, are we doing it again? And they're like, yeah, we just got to just get a bit more. I think we just got a bit of muscle tissue. I'm like, okay, great, there goes my gains. Essentially, they go in again for a third time. I could feel it. It's a weird sensation because you don't feel the skin, because the skin is obviously under the local anaesthetic, but you can feel they're sort of prodding at your organ. It's a bit of a weird feeling. And then they go in for a 4th one, and this time was deeper, and I felt that a lot more. It wasn't like a painful pain, but I think part of it is also a mental thing as well, because it's just the thought of someone just putting a massive needle through your back into your kidney. But once that was done, they got the 4th sample, and then they flipped me straight over, laying now directly on my back. And immediately when that happened, I felt so sick. Like I couldn't control it. I literally just felt like the blood just drained from my head, and I just felt like I instantly needed water, or was going to throw up or something. I didn't throw up, luckily, but the doctor sort of looked at me and I thought, oh, it's not a great look. I've now been told that I did go completely pale, but I guess that's just my body's natural reaction to what had just happened, just being stabbed 4 times. And essentially after a biopsy, you then have to sit there, well, I say sit there, lay there and not move for up to 6 hours. So you just don't cause any sort of internal tearing and damage. So I'm sitting there in my room, and my mum is there at this point, and then I sort of just laid there the whole day. The only complication is obviously if you need the toilet, you have to wee in a bottle. They give you these sort of cardboard cutout bottles to wee in. It's not a really natural thing to wee when you're sort of laying down, but you have to. If you need to go, that's the only way you can go. And I sort of just tried to hold it in. I thought, just get through the 6 hours. After about 5 hours, I needed the toilet, definitely. So I decided to go to the toilet. And again, another very weird sensation. Basically, after I'd weed, there was a big blood clot in my urine. So I'd essentially literally just weed out blood. It all sort of clumped together, and it was kind of like the size of this in my wee, all just sort of collected together where it just been sitting in my bladder and just clumped up in a ball. It wasn't painful, I admit that, but it wasn't normal. It doesn't feel right. So the nurse instantly sees it and she goes, right, yeah, he's staying here the night. There's no way we're letting you go home. So the whole process, what I didn't mention of the 5 hours up to this point, was that the nurses come in and out very, very quickly, or every 15 minutes or so, regularly, should I say, check my blood pressure. Basically just double check that I'm not bleeding out. But they then had to do, because of the blood clot, they had to do another blood test to make sure that it wasn't a big internal bleed. Fortunately, my hemoglobin levels in my blood were were a good enough rate to make sure that I was all right and didn't need a blood transfusion, which would have been a whole another thing. So at this point, I've been told that I need to stay. I'm bleeding internally a little bit, but that's what, there's blood there from the biopsy, but I'm not bleeding out internally. It's the main thing. So I get put in a ward. It gets late in the evening and I'm by myself at this point, obviously. Pitch black and I need the toilet again. But it's the mental thoughts of needing the toilet after knowing that you're likely going to wee more blood after essentially just weeing a big blood clot. So I was kind of holding myself back a little bit in bed. And also, it's just not natural. Like, you're laying completely flat on your back and you're weeing in a bottle under the covers. Like, it's just... it's not great. Basically, long story short, I managed to completely empty my bladder and I'd never been in so much pain in ages. Like that was so, the pain was so excruciating all on my left hand side. As soon as I cleared my body, it was almost like there was more blood ready to go rushing out. For those of you that are Star Wars fans that have seen Revenge of the Sith, you know the scene where Anakin, before he turns to Vader and he's sort of laying there on the bed and he's in excruciating pain as they're sort of putting his body parts back. And yeah, I literally felt like that in bed. Obviously that's an exaggeration, but that's exactly like the way I could describe it. And I didn't have anything for an hour because the nurse had to get a doctor to get some painkillers, ended up having cocodamol or codeine, one of the two. Fortunately, after about an hour, that literally just put me to sleep. That was fairly strong for me, but yeah, that was painful. Anyway, got through that first night, out of the way. Comes the second day, sort of just laying there again. By this point, by the way, I haven't even sat up. Like, I'm still laying down. Like, I was sitting up a little bit in my bed, but I was still, like, my back head was against the backboard of the bed. So yeah, completely bed bound. At this point, still wearing it's sort of like dark red. It's not great. The whole point I was still in there basically was to monitor my blood and my urine and make sure the blood goes in my urine eventually. That's the main thing they were checking up on, making sure I didn't need blood transfusion. So it kept going, and then another day passes, sitting there, not doing anything. My mum comes, fortunately, I've got company. At least, I'm very grateful I could get through that. Gets to the next night, and then you can imagine what it's like in hospitals. I mean, I was very fortunate I had a window next to me, and I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, and they have a lot worse wards than what I was on. I was on a ward where basically a lot of people are close to being discharged from the hospital, but I was by far the youngest there, and clearly at night it's not the quietest whatsoever in the wards. I really did get a lack of sleep. There's just, yeah, it's not a great place to recover, but what can you do? On the second night, they had to completely disinfect the room, so they moved us over to another room, and to move myself, they put me in a wheelchair. So I was wheeled to another bed, and I briefly didn't have like a pillow on that bed and other things, and they managed to get some towels together, chuck it in a pillowcase. I said to them, I was like, right, I'm gonna need a wee again soon. And the whole point of this, I was weeing a lot, because the idea is when you're bleeding, they need to flush it out, so you drink a lot of fluids to eventually flush all the blood out. I was kind of like, I don't want to say edging is the right word. That's not the right word. Like, I was not completely weeing with confidence. Every single time I would go to wee, I just felt more like nervous mentally because of the pain that I knew I'd had previously after completely like emptying my bladder. And just the thought of weeing blood ain't the greatest thing either. But yeah, I got to the point in the middle of the night again, this is like 2 a.m. and I'm like, I need to wee, and I did. And again, the same thing happened. And both these times, I forgot to mention the other time, I threw up after I'd weed as well. So yeah, let alone was I in that much pain, I was just threw up all over myself. I had like a bowl, like a bag or something at the time. So I was covered in blood, piss and sick in my bed. So yeah, not the greatest of scenarios. And then again, same sort of thing, bit of medication, completely straight to sleep. And then, well, they had to wake me up to move me because they'd finished cleaning our original ward so I can move back to that. So I'd had a couple of hours sleep and then bam, woken up, and then obviously they send around your breakfast and stuff. I mean, the hospital food, I mean, I'm not an advocate for that whatsoever. I mean, I know, I get it's the NHS, I get it's the hospital, it's not supposed to be fine dining, but a lot of it was just so processed, and I just stayed away from all of it. So I didn't eat when I was in hospital. So this is already by day 3 at this point. I'd stayed there 2 nights after the biopsy. Then this is where things started getting a bit more interesting, because I then had the results come through from the biopsy, which is fairly quick. And I must admit, I appreciate all the staff at the hospital as well. They were very quick in making sure that I had my bloods done and things like that, and keeping on top of of me. So I had a doctor come speak to me. The doctor goes to me, I'm afraid it's not very good news. That's all you want to hear from a doctor. This was a kidney doctor, by the way. So it's the first time I'd spoken to him. I've spoken to various doctors over the past sort of 4 or 5 days at this point. And he just goes, yeah, the biopsy, we've had the results, and basically the tissue wasn't good enough and it was inconclusive. Basically, in other words, they didn't get the results they needed from the test. And then that's what he said. And I thought, well, okay, so what do you mean? What, so we've got to do it again? And he goes, yes. So I'm sitting there thinking, I've just gone through all this, staying overnight in hospital, passing all these blood clots, being in this pain, going through that biopsy for nothing. Essentially what he literally told me. And then this is where I had the options, because obviously at that point I was just more frustrated with my whole situation. How I'd gone from having no symptoms, working normally and doing these things in summer, traveling, to just suddenly I'm in this situation, just like that, like 1 week to the next. So yeah, and then we were weighing up all the options, and then that's when we started talking about dialysis and that sort of thing, going down that path. And I just thought, what has this come to? And then he goes, well, you can have the other biopsy, but then it's a question of having it on your other kidney, and then I'd still have to, there's more implications of that, and then doing it with a different department so you can locate your kidney better. And I was like, well, why didn't I have that in the first place? He was trying to refer me to a radiology department who don't specialise in biopsies, but yet they're better at specialising in locating organs. And he explained how they do a kidney biopsy on the left kidney because there's less blood arteries, or there's loads of small arteries around your kidneys, but there's less there, so there's less of a chance of bleeding more from it, because they're going in blind. The doctor doesn't know how many arteries they're going to pass through to get to your kidney. For all I know, for mine, they took loads of muscle tissue or cut through arteries, all sorts, to make me bleed like the way I did. So the doctor he left me with that, and he was like, oh, we could try this other route, and that's when you sort of take medication, i.e. steroids, but it's a stab in the dark because we don't know exactly what's wrong with your kidneys still at this point. So I had to give it some thought. Obviously, massive shock, yeah, one of those things. That was then about 15 minutes later. The same doctor came back and told me that they'd had the full reports through, and there was a couple sentences that had missed out on the original report that basically explained a good enough result or reason as to what was wrong with my kidneys from the biopsy. In other words, I didn't need to do another biopsy. I'm not an emotional person whatsoever. For those that know me as well, on a personal level, people take the mick out of me because I'm not that emotionally inclined, I guess. But that's the most emotional I've been in a while, because to be told one thing to an extreme opposite end in the space of 15 minutes, I mean, it was literally a case of a couple sentences that basically said the reasoning behind why my kidneys were the way they were. I've just never felt so much relief ever in my life, like by far, like top 10 moments of relief ever. It's just like I literally was off sweat. I literally couldn't. At that moment I hugged my mum, and I couldn't even sit there and look at him and take it all in. I just had to bring myself around, because I was just going through all that again. So basically they found out that my kidneys were impacted from the medication I was taking to do with my ulcerative colitis. The Pentasso I mentioned earlier, or specifically what it is, mesalazine, that I'd been taking since the age of 17, has been causing inflammation of my kidneys this whole time. I say this whole time, we don't know how long it's actually been causing it, but I know how long I've been taking it, and that's a fair amount of time. I'm now 24, just turned 24, and this is on and off 7 years, with a gap in the middle, give or take. So the plan of action for this, I was at a point, or my kidneys were at a point where I was fortunate enough to not need immediate dialysis, and that I could go home and take steroids daily with the hope to bring down my creatine levels, or creatine, whatever. And that later that night, I still was weeing blood clots. I managed to stand up that day for the first, which is another weird thing of when you've been laying down for so long, nearly 3 days. I mean, I felt really, really weak. I mean, you would when you're not eating as well. All I've been doing is just drinking water and sleeping, and having blood taken out of me and bleeding and weeing blood, throwing up. So I was discharged from the hospital that night. So I was discharged on a Wednesday night when I'd went in the first thing, originally on the Thursday the week before, but then the biopsy was the Monday. It's amazing how quickly you deteriorate in hospital. I managed to at least get home. Initially, I was going to have to stay there a lot longer, wait for me to pass the blood and recover from the initial biopsy to then do another one, but fortunately didn't have to in the end. So at this point, we're now home. We're now back in this room. I'm now on, at this point, steroids to basically try recover what is left of my kidneys. So, and then I'm obviously completely off the mesalazine now, and I will never be taking that again. So I'm not taking anything for my ulcerative colitis. It's now been 2 weeks of taking the steroids at the time of this recording. I've had one phone call today, which was a checkup, which was after about 10 days in, just short of 10 days. And my levels have dropped slowly. I'm still very in the dark of how much permanent damage has been done to my kidneys from this medication. And to combat or to try help my kidneys, even though it was a medication that caused this damage, I'm still been doing a lot of research myself. Obviously, as I said earlier, I'm a big believer of natural remedies. For example, your diet, big factor, your lifestyle, big factor. Very fortunately, I've also got age on my side. I don't smoke. I'm not a big drinker. I would argue that I'm fairly active. I like a lot of my sports. So I'm in the best possible position I can be to try combat this. But I'm trying to take to that next level, and I've been leveling up my diet. I mean, prime example of what I've got here, this kefir drink. I've been sticking to low potassium foods, eating lots of veg, fruit, yogurt, staying away from red meat, obviously not drinking, completely cut out coffee, cutting out the caffeine. That was a big thing for me. I mean, I love my steak and coffee. I mean, the doctor advised for me to not change my diet and that it wouldn't have an impact, but each to their own opinion. I'd like to get a second opinion on this, and I'm still very, obviously extremely new to this. I'm learning things more and more. I picked up a couple books. I've already read about that and the sort of the meals I can eat. And further from the diet, I've been isolating. So at the moment, I'm just living in this house with my mum. I'm not going outside. I'm now not weeing blood anymore. And I can now walk again and walk properly without discomfort. I haven't been back to the gym since, so that's another thing that's playing on my mind, that I can't work out normally. You're not supposed to lift heavy after at least 2 weeks from a biopsy, so that's now just been 2 weeks. Not allowed to drive. Have been going to the office. Fortunately, I can work from home in my 9 to 5. But yeah, I'm supposed to go into uni, and I'm not doing that because that's supposed to be in person. I haven't seen any of my friends and family outside my mum, so I'm completely sort of going back to what it's like in quarantine. And the doctor said I don't necessarily need to go to this extent, but right now my immune system is extremely weak. So I just don't want to risk anything. I've already had shingles. That's not the greatest thing. So I don't want to get it again because the chances of having it is quite likely. I've been told now the doctor wants to keep me on this prescription of steroids for at least, well, up to 3 months. So we'll see. The dosage might come down with that, but that's all dependent on my blood results. Already, I mean, I had to miss one of my mates' weddings. I'm supposed to be in Prague right now with some of my best mates. It's not been great, but basically why I wanted to make this video and why I titled it the way I have is because I want this to be a sign for someone who might think they could be all right. Like myself, I thought I was absolutely fine, no health issues whatsoever, but all because I didn't have regular blood tests for the past 6, however many years. This could have been picked up a lot sooner and could have had far less implications. That's why in this I'm sort of saying have a blood test even if you think you're well. I know of people that I've spoken to since, they said they've never had a blood test in their life. Some of my mates, that's what they've said, and it's just one of those things where I think you just never know, so it's worth getting tested. In my case, I was extremely lucky that this was picked up from this blood test, because this blood test was just a message I got saying that I was due one, because I never would have purposefully gone to have a blood test if I hadn't have been told to have this. And who knows where I would have been if I didn't have had it and I didn't look at my phone, I didn't reply to the message saying, yeah, okay, I'll book it in. Basically, at this point in time, I've been given a second chance to live somewot of a normal life before the need of dialysis or a kidney transplant. My current kidney function when I was in hospital was 13.5%. At 7% is when you are recommended to have immediate dialysis. So my kidneys were really poor, and it might have only been a matter of time before it got a lot worse. So I was very, very lucky to get it picked up when it did. My kidneys might have been at this level for the past X amount of years, and I've just never known. Throughout all the things I've done, marathon, Tough Mudder, traveling in the Philippines, Thailand, New York, like all these long haul trips, all these flights, all these mixing with people, and this whole time internally it wasn't good. So that's why I urge you to get tested and basically keep on top of your blood health. Fortunately for my situation regarding content, I've got a load of a backlog of content, so I'm not necessarily in a rush to go to record too much, and I'm going to have a lot of stuff still to be posted. I might start making a lot more content around this now that it's going to become a big part of my life. Before or leading up to this point where health has just been a part of my life to essentially just improve myself and get better, now it's almost a must. Like I can't now afford to not look after it. If anyone is watching this, by the way, and has sort of been through a similar process, I mean, I'll be interested to talk on it. That's part of another reason why I'm making this. I've got my dinner here tonight. I've just got some like veg, sweet potato, onion, chicken, very, very nutrient dense, low potassium veg. So a lot of this is really good for your kidney health. Right now, my body is in a bit of a weird place with the steroids. I'm staying up till like 4 a.m. with insomnia because I'm physically laying there, my eyes are open and I'm struggling to fall asleep. So I've just got so much energy and it's very, very hot. My blood is just sort of rushing around my body, and it's one of those things. I'll get through it. Just touching on the luck part, what I mentioned earlier about having the blood test. Like, something that I've been working on as well personally is, I haven't really talked about this online at all, is my faith. I mean, I've always been a Christian at heart, but I've never been so open about it, or I've never been a very strict Christian, and it's only very recently where I've started to get back into it. And I went to church not too long ago with one of my best mates. I've got a Bible and I've been actively trying to read, just in general, just improve with my faith. And it's just so coincidental that this has come up at pretty much the exact same time, and I can only think of it being as one of those moments, especially when I was sort of sitting there in hospital and thinking all the things that I've done in my life already up to this point. Just the thought of regret with time. At that moment, all I could think about was the quote was, most people begin their lives once they realise they only have one. That was a real moment for me. And I also just got this is a St. Christopher pendant. I've had this for a good amount of time, and I only recently just got this fixed, and I got it back just before my biopsy, and even the doctors told me that I was extremely lucky to be caught when I was, before it got too late. As much as this has been a pretty eye-opening experience and life-changing experience, it's also been a blessing that this has come up at this moment, because it could have been so much worse if I just hadn't have had a blood test. Anyway, I'll leave it as that. I'll post an update on this maybe in the next coming weeks, or who knows, on my socials somewhere. I might just drop a comment under here. As I said, I'm going to be posting more stuff about all my travels and fitness and everything else related that I've already pre-recorded, so I've got a load of content still to come. So make sure to subscribe to follow along for all that. Anyway, I'll speak to you in the next one in a bit.